My name is Alyssa Monroe. I'm 25, and I learned the price of loyalty the hard way. It started with $77,000 and a promise that family meant everything. But some lessons don't come in words. They come in silence, in distance, in the moment. You realize love can humiliate as easily as it can heal. This is the story of what I sent when words were no longer enough. The train doors opened to warm air and the sound of traffic. Naples wasn't Florence. I dragged my suitcase along the curb, the silk of my dress catching in the wind, the scent of fried dough mixing with salt from the sea. My phone buzzed with a message from my brother, a few careless words that told me everything. He had sent me here on purpose. There was no mistake, no wrong address, just cruelty, disguised as humor. For a long moment I stood still, staring at the unfamiliar streets, realizing that every transfer, every sleepless night I spent helping him plan had been nothing more than charity disguised as love. $77,000, my entire savings. The work bonus I had promised myself would be my start toward something of my own. My mother's voice echoed in my mind, her favorite phrase from childhood. Family means loyalty. She said it every time she asked me to forgive him, every time she needed me to clean up his mess. Standing in that city, dress clinging to my skin, I finally understood what she really meant. To her, loyalty was obedience. To me, it had been love. As I pulled my suitcase toward the hotel, I felt the sting of something sharper than betrayal. It was clarity, the kind that strips illusions bare. Loyalty, I realized, means nothing without respect. Without it, devotion becomes servitude. I sat in a small cafe tucked between narrow streets, the kind where time moved slowly, and the smell of roasted coffee filled every corner. My suitcase rested by the chair, my dress wrinkled, and my reflection in the window looked like someone I barely knew. I tried to replay the day, to find the moment when love had turned into a lesson. But there was no single moment. It had been building for years, quietly, like a structure made of debt and denial. $18,000 for the venue, $24,500 for catering, $7,800 for the dress, $3,200 for flowers, $4,600 for lighting. Each payment had felt like a promise, a down payment on belonging. I told myself it was family, that I was investing in something that would eventually include me. I remembered the $12,000 I gave my mother to erase her credit card debt and the tuition I covered for my brother's last semester when he almost dropped out. None of it had ever been repaid. It was never even acknowledged. I stirred my coffee and watched the foam collapse. Pain didn't destroy character. It was designed. That thought settled in me like a blueprint I had never seen before. The humiliation I felt wasn't wasted. It was construction. Every betrayal added a beam, a wall, a floor of awareness. By the time the cup was empty, my breathing had steadied. I no longer felt like a victim waiting for an apology. I felt like a witness collecting evidence. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank, and began to download every transfer, every receipt, every invoice with my name on it. Not for revenge, for clarity, for the truth that could no longer be rewritten. Back in New York, the city looked sharper than before, its noise distant behind office glass. My desk light cast long shadows over stacks of invoices and printed receipts, every page lined with evidence of a truth no one could deny. The same spreadsheets that once built their dream now became the tools of my quiet order. I worked late into the night, fingers moving with the precision of someone balancing an equation that had never been fair. There was no anger in the motion, only focus. Each document found its place, every transfer labeled, every invoice sealed. When the work was done, I packed it all carefully into a solid wooden crate, 4 feet tall, polished to a soft sheen. I ordered a brass plate and had the words engraved exactly as I meant them to be remembered. The cost of loyalty. It gleamed under the light like a verdict, calm and final. When the courier arrived the next morning, I handed him the shipping slip and looked him straight in the eye. Make sure she signs for it herself. My voice didn't waver. There was no threat, only certainty. As the crate was lifted away, I felt the quiet click of a door closing inside me. I stood by the window for a long time after he left, watching the city wake. My reflection in the glass didn't look angry anymore. It looked settled. What I was doing wasn't revenge. It wasn't meant to hurt or humiliate. It was documentation, a record of truth written in numbers and choices. History finally corrected. The courier arrived at my mother's house just before noon. The wooden box stood tall at her doorstep, polished and heavy, a quiet monument of what she had chosen to ignore. From my office, miles away, I pictured her standing there, hand hesitating on the pen before signing her name. The crate did not look like a threat. It looked like a gift, wrapped in restraint. That was the beauty of it. Justice does not always knock loudly. At my desk, I sipped coffee and continued typing as the minutes passed. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence while my phone stayed face down beside the keyboard. Somewhere across the city, a lid creaked open. Inside were 77 pages, each bound in brown leather, stacked neatly in order of payment. Every invoice was labeled, every bank transfer printed, every total underlined in steady ink. Attached to the top was a single letter written by hand. "You said family means loyalty. I agreed until I learned that loyalty without respect is slavery." I imagined her hands trembling as she read it, eyes moving over the words she had once used to keep me obedient. She would recognize her own handwriting on many of the receipts: venue, catering, dress. Each page was a reflection she could no longer escape. The silence inside that living room must have been unbearable. When my phone finally rang, the sound was soft but unsteady, the way guilt often sounds when it learns how to speak. She asked if she could repay me, her voice breaking at the edges. I listened but said nothing. My silence filled the space between us like a mirror. Every breath she took seemed to echo back her own lessons. In that moment, I realized the box had never been about vengeance. It was about reflection. About letting her see what I had carried for years and what she had chosen not to see. Some truths do not need to shout to be heard. They only need to arrive. The morning after the delivery, the silence broke in waves. My brother's name lit up my phone again and again, each message more frantic than the last. He begged me not to ruin them, said it was all a misunderstanding, that I had taken it too far. I took a photo of their wedding picture still sitting on my desk, the one I had printed from their online album, and laid the $77,000 invoice across the bottom half before sending it to him. The image said everything words could not. An hour later, my mother called again. Her voice was smaller than I remembered, stripped of authority. She told me we could fix this. That family was still family. I listened quietly, then said what I had waited my whole life to say. I don't want it fixed. I want it remembered. The silence that followed was long enough to feel like an ending. By evening, their world began to unravel. Friends who had toasted under chandeliers started asking questions. My brother's wife deleted her wedding photos. Then, under growing pressure, he made the post I had known would come. He admitted the truth. My sister paid for our wedding. We mocked her. I don't deserve forgiveness. The reaction was immediate. Shock spread through every circle they once tried to impress. The admiration they craved turned into pity, and the pride they built on my silence collapsed in public view. The transfer arrived 2 days later. $77,000 returned in full. The numbers appeared on my screen like a confession written in currency. But there was no triumph in it. I didn't smile or cry. It wasn't repayment. It was an acknowledgement, proof that truth had done what revenge never could. Justice, quiet and complete. In the weeks that followed, my life grew quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of avoidance, but the calm that comes after truth settles into place. I went to work, met deadlines, and no longer felt the heavy pull of defending myself in conversations that never heard me. My phone stopped buzzing with apologies I didn't need. Instead, I began to receive messages from people I had once known, co-workers who had watched from a distance and now reached out with words of respect. Some said they admired how I handled it. Others simply said they finally saw me. My mother's calls changed too. Her tone was gentle, almost uncertain, as if learning to speak a new language. She asked how I was sleeping, how work was going, and she waited for my answers instead of filling the air with her own voice. The sharpness that had once shaped her sentences was gone. What replaced it was humility, and though I didn't say it aloud, I felt the shift. The power she once held over me no longer existed. I thought about forgiveness often, wondering if I owed it to her. But forgiveness implies a debt, and I was no longer in deficit. Justice had already balanced the scales. What remained was peace, the kind that doesn't announce itself but lingers quietly in the background of ordinary days. One morning, I stood by the window with a cup of coffee in hand. The city was waking, soft light stretching across the skyline. I watched it touch the glass and felt something in me finally rest. They once thought silence buried me, that my stillness meant surrender, but silence became the soil where I rebuilt myself, and in that morning light I smiled. If someone erased your loyalty, would you fight to make them pay, or would you let the truth speak for you? Sometimes silence can be the loudest form of justice. It does not seek revenge. It simply waits until honesty finds its way to the surface. Think about the moments when you stayed quiet, not out of fear, but out of strength. Did that silence free you or weigh you down? Share what you learned in the comments. Maybe your story will help someone else find the courage to turn their own silence into power.